Hello everyone, and this is my Raw review for the New Year's Eve edition of Monday Night Raw. And just to go off and say, right off the bat before going into it, the reason why I did not do any reviews last week was mostly because I went home for the holiday season, mainly just Christmas, and was going to do it. Ended up missing most of Raw, and then ended up watching a lot of it. And then I ended up getting sick by about Thursday night, so I decided not to do any reviews throughout the whole week. I am still a little bit under the weather now, but I'm going to continue on, try to continue doing reviews for you. So on to Raw for this week. Raw this week with the New Year's Eve edition. Honestly, it had some really good matches in there, but one of their main premises throughout the night, which ended up being kind of a flop in my mind, was the whole champion's choice. The champion has their choice of defending the title against whoever they wanted. It pretty much led to, how most of the heel champions would just pick somebody completely ridiculous. So it did lead to some okay areas in there. Like, the one main okay one was just the whole Big Show versus Ricardo Rodriguez area. And the one thing I ended up really liking about that whole situation was they solidified Alberto Del Rio as more of a face than he was before. They're trying to solidify him as a face. His treatment and interaction with Ricardo at that point was well done. They were trying to make it seem like Alberto Del Rio was turning a different leaf and trying to be nicer and trying to be this with Ricardo, and that was the one thing I ended up really liking. But for the terms of the matches, they came off as what you would think they would do. Antonio Cesaro did had Sergeant Slaughter. Eve did challenged Mae Young, which led to another, I don't necessarily say hilarious backstage segment, but you know how they always do the New Year's Eve or the New Year's party or the Christmas Day party or some kind of party during the holidays. It led to Mae Young being announced that she was pregnant again, and thank God they at least said it on there with Mae Young saying "not again" type deal. And at least, and of course that played out throughout the entire, well, maybe about the second hour of the show. And at least this time it wasn't a hand that came out when they eventually did do the birthing and everything at that point. But all in all, I felt like that was a bit of a waste of time there. The 3MB Kane and Daniel Bryan match was actually okay. I definitely liked the backstage segment where you had Kane and Daniel Bryan pacing about who they were going to pick because they wanted to pick the Shield, but now they're in a match with Ryback later in the night. Now who do? They hear 3MB singing terribly, trying to rehearse and everything, and just the response to with Kane and Daniel Bryan just chanting yes. Came off as a really good segment at that point in time. So you had some okay segments in there for those areas, but the matches in general for the titles were not really any good, with the exception of Wade Barrett and Kofi Kingston. That was a really good Intercontinental title match, which eventually led to Wade Barrett winning the Intercontinental title, which is probably a good area for him to be in right now, to try to solidify him more as a main event guy, get him with the Intercontinental title, help put himself a little bit more over going into the future, and hopefully into world title pushes at some point, or at least a main event push at some point. Other good matches in the night were let's see here. Another good match in the night, The Miz, John Cena versus Damien Sandow and Cody Rhodes, Rhodes Scholars. That was a really fun tag team match. Good way to start off the show. Also, the same goes for Dolph Ziggler and Sheamus. Really good interaction, really good match between the two of them again. And now Sheamus has a dealing with the Shield of his own right at this point, so because the Shield came out and attacked him right at the end of the match. So we'll see if they're going to go anywhere with that. Eventually, which we'll see if they'll go any further in that past tonight, because later on in the show he does come out there during the 1-on-3 match with Ryback to attempt to help Ryback out there, which the match never really ended up starting. It kind of just turned into a giant melee right off the get-go, which also eventually led into Randy Orton coming out and the three of them clearing house, and you'll probably see some kind of either another 6-man tag match coming out of this, or you'll see 3 good one-on-one matches come out of this, or maybe this will just be something that they build into the Royal Rumble match in general. Because obviously, well, depending on what they decide to do with Ryback, because he does have the title match next week, but all 3 of those guys could be in the Royal Rumble match going into that pay-per-view match itself. Speaking of that, the segment with CM Punk, Vince McMahon, Paul Heyman, and the Doctor was an extremely good segment, at least in my mind. You just had you had CM Punk trying to put over more about his title run, trying to get respect and getting over what his injury is all about, saying he's not going to be clear next week, this match shouldn't happen. Vince coming out there and saying, you're going to get evaluated by the WWE doctors next week. If they clear you, you go. If you don't clear, there needed to be a replacement, which it was going to be Paul Heyman. The segment, in my mind, came off extremely well and fairly entertaining, at least at that time. And we'll see where they decide to go with it. I think that Punk's going to be able to go as of next week. I'm not sure exactly what his time frame for this injury is at this point in time, but I know they're at least keeping him on television for purposes of, I guess, maybe just trying to keep up ratings, or keeping their WWE champion on the show at all times, which is always a good thing to see. In my mind. The last segment of the night was not Ryback, but was Dolph Ziggler's toast to himself. Really, in all honesty, this segment in general, it was a fairly good segment. It just took too long to get to where they wanted to go. They spent a good, Dolph Ziggler and AJ spent a good 9 minutes. 9, maybe even 10, 11 minutes, just showing, the past year and how much failure John Cena had done and why he was voted Superstar of the Year, complaining that he was voted for that by the WWE fans, bashing the fans at that point in time. And this did eventually lead to John Cena coming out there and continuing on, his normal basic spiel, saying, yeah, he was right, he had a bad year. That was why he, out of respect, decided not to accept the award. All that kind of stuff that you expect from John Cena at this point in time. And which he went through his normal spiel, which led up to him toasting Dolph Ziggler and toasting him, AJ, and basically what they were full of, and excrement dropped from the ceiling onto Dolph Ziggler and AJ, which eventually ended the show. All in all, I felt the show itself, it had some good points to it. It had some very fun segments, very entertaining segments to it. But overall, I did not feel like it was a very good show. It didn't really build too much leading into the Royal Rumble. Then again, they had a lot more focus on the first Raw of the year, which has the big title match, and then it has the return of The Rock. And hopefully, with The Rock coming in there next week, they can start building towards the WWE title match at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, and they can start building a lot more into the Royal Rumble pay-per-view itself. Yeah, this week we basically, in the terms for the Royal Rumble, we found out one Royal Rumble participant in the match. John Cena's officially in there. At that aspect, obviously they were going to put him into the Royal Rumble. There would be no reason not to, because he's not going to be going for the WWE title. He's not really going to be doing anything else at the pay-per-view, and you need him on that pay-per-view in some way, shape, or form. So that's the most logical and best choice to put him in. So overall, I felt This week's Raw did not meet in a good area of building storyline towards the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, but it had a couple really good segments in there, fairly entertaining segments. Just overall wasn't all that great. So that's my review for Monday Night Raw this week. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.